Welcome to episode 238 of Build Your House Yourself University by BYHYU. I'm your host and fellow student, Michelle Nelson, and together we'll learn the basics of home design and construction and demystify the building process so we can better understand the process and be less stressed and build quality dream homes with or without a general contractor. Significant progress has been made on my house, but if you've been following me for a while, you know that the process has been painfully slow. Soil instabilities found during excavation of my property and the subsequent foundation redesign and retaining wall construction added more than 6 months to my timeline. Record rains, including overflow of the river, a brutal winter storm, and a global pandemic added even more delays to my schedule before we had even started framing. Unfortunately, unrelenting pandemic-related shortages in materials and labor continue to wreak havoc on my construction schedule. But we are making progress. It's just slow progress. Before I tell you more, I want to give a shout out to Boy Mom Times 5. Not only for writing such a kind and helpful Apple Podcasts review, but just for being a boy mom times 5. Kudos to you, and thank you so much for taking time out of what I am sure is an incredibly busy schedule to support the show with that review. Wishing you all the best. Thank you for doing that. Okay, let me tell you what's going on with my project. All the windows and patio doors of my house are in, and the standing seam metal roof is just about finished. So we're now approaching the RoughIn phase of construction. The RoughIn stage is when mechanical, plumbing, and electrical subcontractors come in to install some major components of the house. The mechanical sub, remember, installs the HVAC system. A lot of the stuff that goes behind the walls gets put in during the RoughIn, but final connections aren't made until later in the process. In order to begin the RoughIn, framing must be completed. That includes exterior and interior walls, floor joists, subflooring, ceiling joists, and roof rafters. Some contractors, including the builder I'm working with, like to have the roof nearly complete before RoughIn starts, meaning the asphalt shingles or whatever roofing materials that you've decided on should be in place. That's to protect weather-sensitive materials that will be installed during RoughIn. So let's talk briefly about the RoughIn process. Typically, the major subcontractors come into work basically one at a time so that they don't get in each other's way. With very careful coordination, more than one sub can work in a house, but that's not the usual scenario. The subcontractor with the biggest equipment will start. That means the mechanical or HVAC sub does his thing first, since he has the HVAC system and sizable ducts to install. After the mechanical sub, the plumber comes in, and then the electrician. It's important to install ductwork first to ensure that all the ducts can be put in place without blocking or without being blocked by pipes and electrical wires. Think about it. It's easier for smaller pipes and wires to squeeze in and around ducts as opposed to the other way around. It's also during the electrical RoughIn when the location of air vents and return grills is decided. So that's the mechanical RoughIn. Now, what about the plumbing RoughIn? The plumbing RoughIn includes both water and gas line installations. All hot water pipes, cold water pipes, and gas lines to appliances and fireplaces will be installed. The plumber will cap off the pipes until later in construction. Plumbing fixtures such as faucets and toilets are not installed during the RoughIn. Fixtures are put in later. Gas fireplace units themselves are also installed around the time of RoughIn, but the fireplaces are put in by a dedicated fireplace installer. The electrical RoughIn includes doing the wiring layout, pulling electrical wires through conduits, which are simply narrow tubes, plus setting up the electrical panel, aka the breaker panel or breaker box. You know what the breaker box is. That's the gray metal box with a door somewhere in your house where your circuit breakers are. I started to do a long explanation about circuit breakers and electrical panels here, but it would just take too long. So I'll save that information for a dedicated mini lesson. I'll also include some very, very basic electrical information. Maybe that lesson will be in the next couple of weeks at the next episode. During the electrical rough-in, the electrician installs the wires and the electrical panel. Plus, he or she mounts the junction boxes. Electrical junction boxes, also known as J-boxes or electrical boxes, are those protective square metal or plastic enclosure boxes that you've probably seen before on the outside of buildings or mounted on a home's framing. The junction box is where electrical wires meet up and connect with each other. The boxes cover and protect those electrical connections from weather, dust, and animals. J-boxes also protect people, protect us from accidental electric shocks. And if, God forbid, a fire starts within the junction box, the box stops the fire from spreading. Now, after all that electrical stuff is installed, it just kind of hangs out until later in construction. It's later when rough-in wiring is connected to light switches, electrical outlets, and other devices. So that's the rough-in process in a nutshell. That's what I have to look forward to in the next few weeks. The rough-in needs to be finished before the exterior cladding goes on. That's because openings for pipes and conduits and such, they have to go through exterior walls during the rough-in. Therefore, the exterior cladding can't be added until rough-in is finished. I thought maybe we could save some time by having some of the exterior work done at the same time as the rough-in, but I was wrong. Okay, so now let me update you on a few highlights from the last several months. As I mentioned in the previous podcast, we selected Pella windows for our house. I think Marvin and Anderson windows are just as good in quality as Pella. But one of the main reasons I chose Pella was because they have a dedicated installation crew in my area. Framing carpenters often install windows in residential projects, but I like the idea of having the manufacturers be responsible for everything, the product and the installation. Now, this may not be an option where you live, but it might be something you want to ask about. The reason I felt it was important to have the Pella folks install my windows is because I have some specialized windows, several oversized picture windows, and multi-slide patio doors. Not just the typical double hung or casement windows are being installed in my house. I do have some casement windows, but I also have some specialty windows. And because of that, I thought the more window installation expertise and experience I could find, the better. Hiring the dedicated window installer crew was more expensive than having the framers install my windows. The framers did take a few $1,000s off of the framing price since they didn't have to install the windows, but that discount didn't make up for the cost of hiring the window installation crew. However, I thought having Pella install the windows was worth the extra cost, since there would likely be fewer potential problems. First, because a brand's dedicated window installers have more experience with and fewer questions about the company's products. And secondly, because with any window failures that might arise in the future, only the manufacturer will be responsible for repairs and replacements. Proverbial finger pointing will be completely avoided when only one entity is responsible for a product. The framers can't reflexively blame product defects for failures, and the window manufacturer can't steer clear of responsibility by suggesting improper installation. The main drawback to hiring Pella's install crew was having to wait for an opening in their schedule. It took more than a month to get the installers on site. Because residential construction is booming, laborers of all kinds are in short supply. The problem is seemingly worse in smaller cities and counties. In fact, personnel shortages are so prominent here that the owner of one of our local lumber yards has reportedly been doing the physical labor of filling orders. That owner said that he just can't find people to work. Too few workers have made it difficult for even getting pricing for materials. It took literally 3.5 weeks and multiple phone calls to a local hearth store to get just a couple of quotes for fireplaces. Since I was getting such bad customer service from the hearth stores in the area, hearth stores, by the way, meaning fireplace showrooms. So anyway, I got bad customer service from them, so I went to Jake Cromwell, the fireplace and chimney inspector that I had on the podcast a couple of weeks ago. As I told you at the end of his interview, you can often buy fireplaces from fireplace and chimney inspectors in your area. They can often get the same brands that are offered at the hearth stores. And as fireplace experts, they can often do a much better job installing fireplaces. Another way I actually felt the effects of too few laborers in my area was when I called to request a second HVAC bid. I was completely shocked when I was politely told, "Thank you, but at this time we don't have the staff to do any more new construction jobs." Another incident involved my roofing carpenter. He had 3 workers quit just before they were supposed to start my project. As a result, installation of my standing seam metal roof has taken about twice as long as originally planned. I think the problem is not only COVID infections and quarantines temporarily taking people out of the workforce, but some would argue that COVID-related stimulus checks and enhanced unemployment payments have demotivated potential laborers. That, coupled with a booming construction environment, has made it challenging to get an adequate number of subcontractors on site exactly when they're needed. During the last few weeks, I also finalized some decisions about my front entry door and garage door. I've chosen low maintenance options that will add some contemporary style to my house. I've wanted an oversized pivot entry door for a while now, but I was leery of choosing just any pivot door. And that's because they notoriously allow quite a bit of air infiltration under the door. And as you know, I want a tight building envelope. Well, after a lot of research, I found Red Horse pivot doors. They're designed to resist air infiltration. I'll include a link in the show notes of a YouTube video that demonstrates just how well Red Horse pivot doors are designed. I chose a glass pivot door, so it'll bring light into my entry. Plus, a glass door with a metal frame is much more resistant to warping, swelling, and sticking than wood doors are. And that's important in a humid climate like mine. I also decided on a glass and aluminum garage door for similar reasons. For the contemporary style and the resistance to the elements and warping. Glass garage doors are also super low maintenance. No sealing or staining is needed like I would have had to do with the real wood door that I was originally thinking about. Overhead door makes the glass and aluminum garage door that I'm using. I chose them because the door is beautiful and because they have weather barrier vinyl seals on the door to resist air infiltration. We also decided on our recessed can lights. They're energy efficient LEDs, of course. And they're really good quality lights with a color rendering index of greater than 90. That means that the lights will display the colors of the people and objects in the house in the most natural, attractive way. Lesser quality lights with a color rendering index less than 90, well, those lights distort the true colors of things and people and make them look dull and flat. We're using cans from Contrast Lighting because their brand kind of specializes in recessed lights. They have a ton of styles and trim colors, and they're just really beautiful lights. I'll have a link to their site in the show notes. Now, you can't buy the lights directly from Contrast Lighting, but you can see all the options they have. And then you just request their lights specifically from your electrician, or you can get them from a local distributor or from one of the major online lighting stores like lumens.com or lightology.com. As construction continues, I'm just doing all I know to do to minimize delays. For example, my toilets, although I don't need them for a long time, they're currently sitting in my garage waiting to be installed. I ordered them months ago because I knew that they were on back order and I didn't want to wait for them. I haven't ordered all my plumbing stuff, just those toilets, because they really were taking a long time to come in. I don't know when we'll see the end to these shortages in materials and labor and the resulting unpredictable schedules that come along with them. So if you're in the middle of a build like I am, we've got to try to let our expectations go regarding our construction schedules. It's hard, I know, but I just keep reminding myself that my house will be finished when it's finished. and that's exactly when it's supposed to be finished. If you're currently building, hang in there. We'll make it. And if you're not, and you're not planning on building until things settle down, good for you. You'll avoid many of the frustrations that those of us building now are having to deal with. Either way, I'm wishing you all the best. And thank you for listening. Come back in a couple of weeks and I'll do that episode, I think, on some electrical basics. Thank you for joining me. I'll talk to you next time on the next episode of Build Your House Yourself University by BYHYU. Please remember that the purpose of this podcast is simply to educate and inform. It's not a substitute for professional advice. The information that you hear is based only on the opinions, research, and experiences of my guests and myself. That information might be incomplete, it's subject to change, and it may not apply to your project. In addition, building codes and requirements vary from region to region, so always consult a professional about specific recommendations for your home.